Assalamu alaikum everyone. So today we are going to be talking about why businesses change their objectives over time. So it's a really common thing among businesses that sometimes or one time or another the business don't have a same objective. Their objectives keep changing one after another. Like the objective that we have discussed in the previous videos, profit maximization, survival growth, CSR, they all keep changing. It's not like a business keeps one objective because at one time that initial objective must be achieved, so they might want to achieve something else, or maybe there's some other factors because of which business might want to change their objectives. So let's look at those other factors that cause the business to change their objectives. So the first point that causes business to change its objectives is that the initial objectives that the business set up has been achieved. This is generally the case for startup businesses, as when they have achieved the objective of survival in the market for 1 year, they might switch to growth or profit maximization. Now that point that I've specified over 1 year is because, as I said earlier, the first video we talked about objective. We said that they should follow a SMART criteria, where T in the SMART stood for time management, time period. Sorry. So it all the objectives have a certain time period. So when the objective's time period is over, after that, if the objective is achieved, then they change the objective. It's not like before the time period. Before the time period also the objective will be achieved, and if the time period has taken place, it's time to review the objectives of the business, and then also they can change. But the initial thing about this point is that either the time period should have been reached, or the objective should have been achieved within the time period. So let's suppose a business had an objective of surviving in the market for 1 year. Now that 1 year has passed, they've switched to growth or profit maximization. Competitive environmental change. The point over here is that if competition increases, price might be reduced to keep up with competition, and business will have to change its objectives from profit maximization to survival or growth or even CSR to retain customers. So competition also sometimes causes businesses to change their objectives. If a business has an objective of profit maximization, it's generally forced to change that objective because of the severe competition that exists. Because of the most businesses compete on price factors, so in order to compete that, they might switch to growth or CSR because they know that they can't get the maximized profit in the current market situation, because if they charge high prices, uh, customers are generally expected that customers will go to your competitive businesses, the competing businesses, because they have reduced prices. So thereby you can't charge high prices, so you have to lower the price. So either you go for survival growth or even CSR by creating the value for your product, that it's an environmentally sustainable product. You take good care of your employees, provide timely payment to your suppliers, and you have a great reputation and all. So because of that, you can retain your customers and hence charge good prices. Now objectives can also change by new leadership and management. Change in management may lead to change in objectives, as they might have different opinions on how the business should be run. They might think that there is a greater need for profit maximization instead of CSR to prevent shareholder dissatisfaction. Now this over here is just an example that I gave. Of course there could be many other reasons for that, but the general idea behind this point is that if the management of the business changes, if there's new leadership, if there's new management, for example in public limited companies, if a new majority shareholder comes, they might have some different views. They might want something else. They might want the business to shift to profit maximization so that they can have the reward for their risk for their shares. So generally businesses tend to switch to profit maximization instead of CSR, or even they can even go the other way around. If management thinks that the long-term benefits of CSR are much greater than profit maximization, then they might switch to CSR. So things like that can happen. Now another reason is technology changes. The basic idea behind technology changes is that new production possibilities are available now. A business might change to its objectives to growth from CSR, as the availability of new machineries will improve efficiency and labor might need to be made redundant if it switches to capital intensive production method. So if a business, for example, I've just taken an example over here, that if they have the objective of growth, they might want to increase their sales, but when they might want to increase their sales, previously they had the objective of CSR, but since there's new machinery available, they can produce the products at a in a much efficient way with new machineries, and the labor could be made reduced, the unit cost could be reduced because of the salaries. They might want to use switch to capital intensive, and a general switch to labor intensive to capital intensive means that you have to make your labors redundant. Redundant means that their services are no longer required, so you just fire them, sort of. You just say sorry, you are no longer needed. So because of that, labor will be made redundant, and that's not something a business with a CSR policy will do. But since technology has changes, there are new production methods available. They change to CS growth objective, so that they can remove the employees, they can remove the labor, so they lose the CSR policy of theirs. External changes like recession in an economy. If the economy goes into recession, the business might have to change its objectives from profit maximization or growth to survival, so as to continue its operations and cover the costs until the economy goes back to normal. Now, this is something very common, and the biggest example for this we have is our current situation, a pandemic that's been taking place since the COVID arrived, COVID-19. Because of that, this is a recession in the economy, so all businesses have switched to survival instead of profit maximization or growth. They don't want to increase the profits or the growth, because because they know that customers cannot buy such expensive products, nor are they willing to buy some products that are not needed. So they just want to survive in the current standard until the economy goes back to normal. So they want to survive, of course we have to reach the break-even point. That is where the cost is equal to the total revenue. So you try to increase your revenue, you might try to increase your distribution, increase your promotion, reduce your prices, so that so that your cost can at least be covered. Now new opportunities can arise with growth, such as multinational trade. Market might be growing at a rapid pace, and if opportunities to expand the operations are available, business might switch its objectives from profit maximization to growth and increase its sales to retain a greater market share. Now, sometimes it happens that business switch from profit maximization to growth. The basic idea is that you have a greater chance, you have more opportunities for growth. So it's a fool person will not take this opportunity head on. If you have an opportunity knocking at your door, why not just open the door and greet that? So yeah, businesses do that. They switch their objective to growth, they reduce the prices, they increase their sales, and hence gain a greater market share. A greater market share will mean that they have a chance of being the market leader, and of course market leader has its own perks. So that's all about all these points that they have discussed, that why business change their objectives over time. Thanks for watching. Allah Hafiz.